Coming up in today's newscast, United States President Trump endorses the two-state solution, then changes his mind. Israel again works to bring football teams Barcelona and Atletico Madrid to the Jewish state, and thousands of worshippers gather at Jerusalem's Western Wall Plaza to receive priestly blessings. United States President Donald Trump again made headlines this week after publicly endorsing the two-state solution as the best option for the first time. Trump made the comments Wednesday in a meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly in New York. And the president also said his long-awaited Middle East peace plan will be delivered within the next 2 to 4 months. And the two leaders also spoke about regional issues with Iran, Syria, Russia, etc. But the endorsement of two states is still the biggest news, especially as Prime Minister Netanyahu reportedly knew about President Trump's new position.
I like two-state solution. Yeah, that's what I think. That's what I think works best. I don't even have to speak to anybody. That's my feeling. Now, you may have a different feeling. I don't think so, but I think two-state solution works best.
That being said, just hours later at a press conference, President Trump seemed to backtrack, going back to a position of supporting whatever solution the parties agree to. This has been the Trump administration's policy for a while now, though the United States at the same time has seemingly been isolating the Palestinians from the equation altogether. Most notably by shutting them out of Washington, cutting financial aid, and recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Trump claims, however, that these moves are to take the biggest chip off the table, i.e. Jerusalem, in order to clear the path for a real deal.
Actually, by taking off the table the embassy moving to Jerusalem, that was always the primary ingredient as to why deals couldn't get done. I spoke to many of the negotiating teams, and they said they could never get past the embassy moving into Jerusalem and all of what that meant, which you know what that meant. That meant everything. And now that's off the table.
As for Netanyahu's supposed support, it's true that the prime minister reiterated his stance on negotiating a two-state solution, but he also maintained that his definition of a state may differ from that which the Palestinians would agree to. Netanyahu told reporters that as long as he's prime minister, Israel will not give up on security control west of the Jordan. Meanwhile, however, as Netanyahu and Trump continued to talk about peace with the Palestinian mission to the UN was meeting with foreign ministers, diplomats, and representatives of over 40 countries and international organizations in efforts to circumnavigate the U.S.'s peace efforts entirely. Abbas discounted the United States under President Trump as a partner in peace ever since Trump's Jerusalem decision in December 2017. And now, at the United Nations event, which was closed to the press, Palestinian Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki said attendees held dialogue on how to, quote, overcome the current obstacles that were put in front of this process, both by the American administration and the Israeli government, end quote. But suffice it to say that unless negotiations actually occur between the Palestinians and Israel, neither party's plan is likely to take root. Now, as we discussed, aside from the Israel-Palestine conflict, Iran has taken center stage at the United Nations General Assembly in New York as the world's nations are divided day by day. The United States, which recently resumed harsh sanctions against the Iranian regime after leaving the JCPOA nuclear deal, has been urging the world to follow suit. But the rest of the deal's signatories, and indeed much of the rest of the world, have been resistant to Trump's calls. The EU has even created a fund specifically geared towards offsetting the cost of doing business with Iran under sanctions from America. Well, returning to the studio now with more on this story is Davidi Hermelin, the president of the International Center for Public Diplomacy in Israel. Davidi, it's a pleasure to have you back. Thank you so much.
Happy Sukkot.
Happy Sukkot. Chag Sameach. Thank you so much. So my first question, where does this leave us with Iran right now and indeed relations with the rest of the world? Because Israel is kind of caught in the middle here, although at the same time they've fully endorsed, sanctioning Iran. But we're caught between what America does and what the rest of the world wants.
This is one way to see that, but I think that from day to day we can hear about more and more companies that freeze their businesses within Iran and with Iranian companies. And although we are not in the very ideal situation that we could hope for, still our situation now is much better than it was, let's say, 6 months ago. And I do think that the people of Israel And Israel as a state should be very thankful to the American people and to their president for their ongoing, unbreakable stand alongside Israel. And when I'm talking the president, I'm talking about this president, and not the former one, of course, which his policy was very challenging. And I think that when we see the results of the Iranian behavior, I think that it's now all can say that it was very wrong policy.
Well, but again, how can we say necessarily that, what evidence is there that the United States' sanctions policy has been effective when the rest of the world seems to be ignoring it?
Between countries usually, there are no friendships, but mostly interests. So while talking about Israeli policy in the region, and of course regarding the Iranian issue, we must calculate the interests of all the political elements in the region. One thing is very clear. Russia wouldn't like Turkey to be strong in Syria, and Russia doesn't like Iran to be strong in Syria, because in places when you will not find the Turks or the Iranians, Russia will enjoy more flexibility and will be more free to take care for its own interests.
Sure.
So we must play on this, we have to play on this field. And
you're saying to take the interests of every country, see which ones align, and kind of work with those?
Exactly. I think that the main priority of Putin administration is that Iran will be weaker and weaker in Syria. And if you want Iran weak in Syria, you want them weak also in other fronts of them. So I wouldn't lose hope, but still, I think that for sure, the tolerance toward the Iranian regime and its nuclear ambitions is the worst behavior. The better policy is to be strong, and not always you will find everyone together with you, but the other relevant option is violence and war, and the sanctions are the best way to try to avoid war.
All right, David Yerlin, thank you so much for coming in again.
Thank you very much.
All right, another news from New York. Prime Minister Netanyahu continued his meetings at the United Nations General Assembly with leaders like Egyptian President Sisi and many more. With Sisi, the two met last night for roughly 2 hours to discuss regional developments and the situation in Gaza. Egypt had been moderating ceasefire negotiations between the Hamas terror group in Gaza and Israel until negotiations broke down again earlier this week. Hamas has since called for a resumption of violence, but Egypt does seem committed to brokering some sort of agreement. As for security to Israel's north, Netanyahu met and discussed threats from Syria, Iran, Lebanon, and other various terror groups, both with President Trump and United States Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. The Israeli Prime Minister then went on to discuss strengthening ties with Belgium and Guatemalan leaders Charles Michel and Jimmy Morales, and fighting anti-Semitism with Austrian Chancellor Sebastian Kurz and Polish President Duda. This was the first meeting between Netanyahu and Duda since the crisis over Poland's Holocaust bill. Netanyahu was heavily criticized for seeming to capitulate to Poland in return for a watered-down version of the bill, which threatened anyone who blamed Poland for Holocaust war crimes with jail time. And now, even more criticisms have erupted, especially after the Israeli Prime Minister declined an invitation from UNESCO to come to a conference on anti-Semitism. Israel and the United States left the organization in 2017, and Netanyahu said that while he commends all efforts to combat anti-Semitism, he'd refused the UNESCO invitation due to UNESCO's, quote, persistent and egregious bias against Israel, end quote. In a statement issued from the Prime Minister's office, he said UNESCO must do more than host a conference on anti-Semitism. It must stop practicing it too. On Sunday night, Spanish journalist Julio de la Guardia slammed his car into 31-year-old ultra-Orthodox musician Chaim Tukachinsky, killing him in a hit-and-run drunk driving accident. And now it's also been revealed that the suspect had actually already been deported from Israel for beating and injuring his wife during a domestic dispute a few years ago. La Guardia had been living in Israel in 2011 and working as a correspondent for several Spanish outlets, but was deported after the incident with his wife. Authorities are still investigating how he was reissued a new work visa and allowed to return to Israel. Worse still, since returning to Israel, LaGuardia has reportedly been living and working under a fake name for Iranian television. As we reported yesterday, LaGuardia hit Tukachinsky in Jerusalem's Paris Square on Sunday, killing him. Tukachinsky had been walking home from the Western Wall after the first night of the Sukkot holiday when he was run over by LaGuardia, who later fled the scene. LaGuardia was located 90 minutes later in the Mount Scopus area, and his breathalyzer tests showed that his blood alcohol content was 3 times higher than the legal limit. On Monday night, LaGuardia was released to house arrest, but was subsequently denied house arrest when it was discovered that he would spend it at the home of the Spanish consul. A new bill passed in 2011 in Israel, doubling the punishment for hit-and-run drivers to 14 years in prison. Time will tell how or if the new evidence against him will affect the case, but either way, it's scheduled to resume today.
All right, now for all the sport lovers in Israel, we have some very promising news. Only a few months after the cancellation of the soccer match between Argentina and Israel that many were waiting for, it looks like the big star Lionel Messi will be coming to the Holy Land after all. And apparently Israel will be hosting a match between Barcelona and Atletico Madrid. And here to tell us all about it is ILTV's Joy Gavijon. Joy, what do you say? Can we start buying jerseys?
Hi, Aaron. Well, my answer for that, for all the soccer fans out there, is cross your fingers, light your candles, and let's hope for this match to actually come true. All we know right now is that the interested parties are very close to reaching an agreement. Actually, 2 officials from the Comtech Group, that it's the group in charge of organizing this event.
Is this the same Comtech Group production company that organized the original canceled match?
Exactly, the same one. So Danny Benaim, CEO of Comtech, and his partner flew to Spain to meet with the father of Leo Messi and leaders from both clubs, all in order to try to sign the official agreement in the next few days. And if all of this goes well, reports say that the game would take place in the Sami Ofer Stadium in Haifa sometime in November. Now, originally, Atletico Madrid requested to play against the Israeli national team, but because of some regulations in the Spanish league, that wasn't possible, so they went for option B, which was Barcelona.
All right, so this sounds very exciting.
It does.
I'm sure the tickets for this game are going to fly as soon as they come out. Everybody wants to see Messi.
Yes, I want to see Messi, but not only Messi. Remember that we're talking about 2 of the best teams in the world right now with many, many high-ranked players. And if this happens, trust me, we'll be able to present a first-class sporting event with players like Coutinho, Suarez, Piqué, Rakitic, Costa, and even some of the world champions like Dembélé, Umtiti, and even Griezmann. So it wouldn't be surprising at all if many French supporters living in Israel are also excited about this game.
All right, well, you convinced me. But I have to ask, how can we be sure that this time they won't cancel last minute or that some political initiative doesn't ruin the whole thing?
Look, we can't be sure. Boycotts happen all the time, but hopefully Barcelona and Atletico Madrid will come and give the Israeli fans the chance to watch some amazing soccer and see their favorite players.
All right, well, we'll definitely have to follow up and let everybody know when tickets do actually go on sale. Thanks for the update, Joy.
Thank you, Aaron.
All right, Israel has often been touted as having one of the best food scenes in the world. In fact, 4 Israeli restaurants made the list of the top 1,000 restaurants in the world, ranked by France's foreign ministry. But sadly, Israel's restaurant industry could be taking a downward turn as a result of a recent court ruling that states that waiters' tips will be regarded as part of their salary pay, and therefore it'll also be taxable income.
This is a drastic change for those who've relied on tips for their non-taxable income. But now, waiters and waitresses will be forced to pay full income taxes on tipped income, regardless on whether or not it even goes through the till. In addition, employers will have to pay pensions, health insurance, and income taxes and national security contributions on the full amount of the worker's salary. Even further, there are serious concerns that the restaurants will soon have to pay the 17% value-added tax, or VAT, which will likely trickle down into higher costs for patrons too, and lower wages for staff. In fact, some estimates go as far as to say that pay for waiters could drop by 20 or even 30%. In the current system, waiters with little to no experience can sometimes make more than 70 shekels per hour. That alone is one of the biggest drivers of the workforce. Management fears that with the new ruling set to take place, however, a drastic impact on the waitstaff may also take place. Far fewer young and quote-unquote unskilled laborers will be attracted to the industry, and fewer people will likely be going out in the first place. The entire industry may be in line for a very hard hit. The court's decision comes after multiple civil cases between restaurants and their employees came to light, in which tipped income took center stage. In one case, the courts penalized the popular Café Noir in Tel Aviv for attempting to block a union from organizing in its waitstaff. The case began a year and a half ago when employees of the cafe accused the management of taking tip money and redistributing it unfairly. In another case, waiter Yechiel Baudet sued the Alfredo restaurant of Petah Tikva, claiming that he'd been paid nothing but tips. And then in yet another case, a waiter sued the National Insurance Institute over benefits, and despite the issue being thrust into the public eye, he lost that case.
Anyone who has ever driven in a crowded city like Tel Aviv knows that parking is by and large the worst part of the experience. Between finding a spot, the cost of parking, and all those one-way streets, it's not a pleasant experience. So as more and more drivers start hitting the roads, it's high time a solution to this issue was found. Well, joining me now to outline his answer is Chaim Shani, CEO of U-Tron. Chaim, thank you very much for coming in with us.
Thank you.
All right, so first of all, what makes U-Tron systems better, and how do they work? What are these autonomous parking systems?
So after you describe all the problematic of a standard conventional parking, just imagine that you drive into a private room. It's your own room, large, 20 by 20 feet, at least 6 by 6 meters. And that's a room which is going to be your own private parking. It means you drive your car, automatically an automated door will recognize it, open the door for you. You drive, you leave your car everywhere. It's air-conditioned, nice lighting, warm atmosphere, everything as you like it to be. Once you leave the car, you can leave your car locked, unlocked, you can leave all the values inside. It's your private parking. You leave, the door will automatically close, and you're done parking. What's make it possible, actually, and what's make it reality is the autonomous parking.
Okay.
Once you leave the room, another door will open from the inside. A special robot will drive, roll into the car, under the car, find the wheel, grip the 4 wheels, and take your car to a available spot inside.
Sure.
So the room is your own room for
and then it
half
puts
a minute.
It somewhere else.
For half
Right.
a minute.
All right, but that's nice. It gives you some leg room. You don't have to worry about actually finding a spot. It'll do that for you. And how easy is it to upgrade to a system like this or to install this?
Yeah, it's actually part of a new development. So we don't do it for existing building, but every new building it's done. And the nice thing that it saves money. So practically an autonomous parking system is lower cost than a conventional parking.
Is it also
We take 1/3 of the space.
Wow.
So we can put 3 times more of the car, but we use less material, less construction
Sure.
time, and we don't need ventilation, we don't
And
need
that's a
lighting.
greener
and-
operation too.
yeah, so it's lower operating cost, everything it's nice. Once you need your car, you use your phone, order it through the app, you can pay by credit card if it's public
Sure.
parking. 2 minutes and you have your car face out because it's easier to leave the garage.
Of course. All right. Well, this is incredible. I'm sure we're going to start seeing U-Tron all over the place. To get in touch with U-Tron or to maybe learn more, you have a very simple website.
Yeah, we
I
do
believe.
have a U-Tron office in New Jersey, in California, and of course over the website.
Perfect.
It's easy to find U-Tron.
Chaim, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
All right, according to the Health Ministry and the Israel Cancer Association, the mortality rate from breast cancer in Israeli Jewish women has fallen 25% between the years of 2005 and 2015. And reports say the decline is a direct result of heightened awareness leading to an increase in early detections and the usage of mammography scans.
According to the data, in 1995, the mortality rate for Jewish women was 27 out of every 100,000. In 2005, that number fell to 20.2 for every 100,000, and in 2015 it fell again to 15.7. The results for Arab Israeli women, however, were less positive, rising from 13.6 women per 100,000 to over 16.3 over the same period. Though the rise in the Arab sector is primarily attributed to the higher rates of testing and evolving lifestyles. But treatment of breast cancer has also greatly advanced. Today, 22,841 women in Israel are diagnosed with breast cancer, 78% of whom are above the age of 50. But Israel's rates of recovery and survival of breast cancer are in 8th place among countries of the OECD, with success rates of 89.7% for Jewish women and 84.4% for Arab women. As of today, the most effective means against cancer is early detection, said Miri Ziv, director of the Israel Cancer Association, who said that with early diagnosis, the chances of recovery can be as high as 90% or more. Ziv went on to say that all women must take responsibility for their health and adopt a healthy lifestyle, which has been scientifically proven to significantly reduce the risk of contracting the disease. That, quote, if any changes in the body do occur, it's important to immediately see a doctor and insist on a diagnosis, end quote.
As the Sukkot holiday begins to wind down towards a close this weekend, thousands of worshippers from around the world gathered at Jerusalem's Western Wall to receive the priestly blessing called the Birkat HaKohanim. And for this annual ritual, the Kohanim, or members of the Jewish priestly class and patrilineal descendants of the first high priest Aaron, Moses' brother, give their blessings to the Jewish people. About 5% of Jewish men are descendants of the Kohanim priestly class, so literally hundreds of Jewish men showed up to bless others in a powerful ceremony. In the Torah, the blessing takes place when the high priest Aaron and his sons were commanded to bless the Jewish people. On the intermediary days of Passover and Sukkot, the event takes place at the Kotel, or the Western Wall complex, which is located at the base of the Jewish Temple Mount. And the Western Wall Heritage Foundation, the organization that oversees the holy site, stated that over 100,000 people attended the ceremonies this year. And in fact, the event was so crowded that the Western Wall Plaza was overflowing with crowds overlooking the Kotel from above. And attendees of the event, including U.S. Ambassador to Israel David Friedman, a member of the Kohanim himself, gave his blessing to the people of Israel too.
It happens twice a year where they have a great Birkat Kohanim ceremony at the Kotel, and it's my opportunity to bless the people of Israel, and it's a great opportunity, so I'm very excited and happy to be here.
The Sukkot holiday, or the Harvest Festival, aka Feast of Tabernacles, aka Feast of Booths, will end on the eve of Sunday, September 30th this year, and the holiday marks the annual time when the Jews celebrate not only God's provisions in the time that the Israelites were in the wilderness, but also a time for Jews to look forward to the promised future where all the world's nations come together in Jerusalem to worship. And now ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh is here with this week's Top 5.
The holiday month of September is almost behind us, including Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and the first few nights of Sukkot. But right before Sukkot ends, we wanted to share with you ILTV's top 5 traditions and fun facts about the holiday of Sukkot. First on the list is the 4 species: the etrog, which is the citron fruit, the lulav, the frond of the date palm tree, the hadas, which is a branch of a myrtle tree, and the arava, a willow branch. These are the 4 species that the Jewish people are commanded to bind together and wave in the sukkah. This is also considered a mitzvah and smells pretty good if you ask me. Second up is the sukkah itself. A sukkah is a walled structure covered with plant material such as palm leaves and is meant to represent the temporary dwelling in which farmers would live during harvesting, which in turn ultimately connects the agricultural significance of the holiday and its many traditions. You can see a sukkah on almost every street corner here in Tel Aviv, from balconies to restaurants, and even one on the boardwalk. Third up is what exactly we do in a sukkah. It's said to be a mitzvah to leave your home and to move to a temporary living space for the week, which is considered to be the sukkah itself. It's also a mitzvah to sleep and eat each meal in the sukkah until the holiday has ended. And what better way to bond with family than to spend the entire week under your beautifully decorated temporary home? Fourth on the list is decorations. At first, I didn't really understand why it was so important to decorate the sukkah until I went to check out the Sukkot festival located in Rabin Square in Tel Aviv, and I found out why. Just like your own home, you like things to be decorative, colorful, and bright. Why should your sukkah be any less spectacular? And of course, it's a fun activity to do with your family. Last but not least is how we celebrate Sukkot. The holiday lasts 7 days in Israel. The first day is a Shabbat-like holiday in which work is forbidden. The following intermediate days are called Chol HaMoed, and only certain work is allowed. And then to close off this festive week is another Shabbat-like holiday. But by no work, I don't mean no waving of the 4 species. That you still have to do each day. That's all for today's Top 5. Back to you.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. As a result of the labor court ruling on restaurants in Israel, waiters and waitresses could be taxed on their tips, which is a groundbreaking decision. That's why our Hebrew word today is mas, which means tax. Death and taxes, or misim, are a part of everyone's lives, as they say, and in Israel it's often higher than elsewhere. For example, Israelis can pay upwards of 50% in mas achnasa, or income tax alone, whereas in destinations like Bermuda and the Bahamas, they have no mas achnasa at all. Then Israel also has a 17% mas, or tax on all goods and services, known as VAT, and this and many other misim, or taxes, make living in Israel quite a pricey endeavor. That being said, don't be too upset about paying mas, or tax. In the words of Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., misim, or taxes, are good because you can buy civilization with them. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be clear and warm with a low of about 73 or 23 degrees Celsius. Then over the weekend, you can expect more sunny skies and steadily rising temperatures to a high of 90 or 32 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.6 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Aaron Porras. Thank you for watching.